Oh, hey! What can I get you? Oh, wait, no, I know just what you want. I know just what you need. I know why you're here. I know why you're here. Don't worry. If you ask, Uncle Lou will deliver. I know what you need. A preview and prediction against the spread for this week's ACC games. Let's go! Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also. And two, in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year, and a lot of them are even watchable. And here we are, the official start of the college football season here on the channel. I know we had a couple of weeks of games already, but Power 5 kicking off this week, tomorrow, in fact, with Miami hosting UAB. Today's video, like I mentioned at the top, I'm going to give you a preview and a prediction against the spread for every single ACC game coming up this week. Tomorrow, I'll do something similar for the Big 12 teams. And then when the SEC kicks off later on this month, we'll add them into the mix as well. Big shout out to the good people over at betnow.eu. Betnow.eu. This is the third or fourth year in a row now I've been lucky enough to work with the good people over at betnow.eu on these preview and prediction videos. Disclaimer right at the top here. I don't make a dime off of anything you deposit in betnow.eu. That's not the arrangement I have with BetNow. All of the numbers that I use in this year's preview and prediction videos, the odds, the over-unders, the money lines, all that kind of stuff is going to come directly from betnow.eu. They've given me a promo code that I can hand out to you guys if you guys want to try to make yourself some money on college football this year. Head on over to betnow.eu, create an account, and when you make your first deposit, use the promo code Uncle Lou, one word, lowercase letters, Uncle Lou, and they're going to give you a bonus on whatever you deposit. Good luck. All right, here we go. Let's kick things off for the 2020 season with the first preview and prediction of the year. This game coming up tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on the ACC network. UAB on the road at Miami. Of course, UAB has already played one game. They got a win over Central Arkansas, I believe it was. Yeah, 45-35 last weekend. Not all that impressive. Now, the score could have been worse. UAB had some turnover issues, 3 turnovers that really kept that game from looking worse than maybe it could have been. They lost their last 2 games to end the season last year, so a much-needed win here for UAB. Similar to Miami, who, of course, lost their last 3 games of the 2019 season, losing on the road at FIU, unexplainable, on the road at Duke, also unexplainable, and the bowl game, Louisiana Tech, where they lost 14-0. Miami, of course, the only bowl team last year not to score a single point. Very disappointing end to the season for Manny Diaz year 1 down at Miami. You get a new coach in, you know you're going to have some bumps in the road. Typically, what you want to look for is some improvement from the beginning of the season to the end. That seemed to not be the case for Miami last year. In my opinion, Miami's best game of the year, they played their first game of the year against Florida. Had a chance to win that game, really. That was probably the best game they played, and it was downhill from there. A disappointing season. A win over Florida State, probably the only thing that saved that season for Miami, but very disappointing finish to the season with a loss on the road at FIU, on the road at Duke, and Louisiana Tech. 3 teams that aren't very good. And if you're Miami and you're trying to convince people that you're close or wanting to get back to the Miami that you used to be, you can't be losing to any teams like this, much less 3 in a row. So I know it's UAB this week on Thursday, but this is a huge game for Miami. Miami has got to win this game. And to anybody that just looks at this game and goes, well, it's Miami and it's UAB, of course Miami's going to win. You probably said that against FIU. You probably said that against Duke. And you probably said that against Louisiana Tech. Miami's got to win this game. According to betnow.eu, they're a 14-point home favorite in this one. Well, I say home. Of course, Miami has to travel to all its games, whether they're home or away. Miami has no home stadium. They have no on-campus stadium. They're on one of these rent-a-center, rent-to-own programs with the Miami Dolphins, where they borrow their stadium 5 or 6 times a year. One of those times this Thursday night. So UAB has to travel a lot further. Miami travels about 30 minutes by bus to get to this game. UAB's got to go a state or 2 over. Longer travel for UAB. Is it going to matter? No, Miami's defense is still really, really good. That hasn't changed. Yes, I hate it for them that they lost Gregory Rousseau, one of, if not the best defensive lineman in all of America. Definitely one of the best within the ACC. He had an ungodly amount of sacks last year. He was their best player. He's opted out. Miami's not unique in that. There's a lot of teams this year that have had players opt out of this season to focus on the draft, citing coronavirus concerns or whatever the case may be. Miami fell victim to that as well, losing that defensive tackle. Huge year for Manny Diaz. He cannot have a repeat of the same mistakes that he had in year one. The offense has got to be better. His coaching has got to be better. And Miami cannot lose any games this year to teams like FIU, Duke, and Louisiana Tech. They got to win them. They lost to Georgia Tech last year, another terrible team. Miami's got to start beating these bad teams if they want anybody to start taking them seriously. Good news for Miami. They bring in transfer QB D'Eriq King from Houston. I think the best available transfer quarterback on the market, at least college quarterback. I'm still not convinced D'Eriq King will light it up in the NFL when he gets there eventually, but that's not, that doesn't matter. He's an elite college level quarterback. Look at what he did at Houston, and he'll have more talent to work with at Miami, regardless of what you think about their roster top to bottom. He'll have more talent to work with at Miami than he ever had at Houston. I think D'Eriq King could have a monster year in terms of overall numbers. The ACC is still relatively weak from top to bottom. Yes, Clemson is an elite team, almost guaranteed playoff team. North Carolina on the way up. Louisville, I think, on the way up. Florida State, they're drowning. Miami, treading water. The list goes on and on. A bunch of sort of average teams in the ACC. Miami does not have a whole lot of hurdles to jump in order to get to where Clemson is. Now, Clemson is way down the track, but there's not a lot of obstacles between Miami and Clemson. There's not a clear second, third, fourth best team in the ACC right now, year to year. It tends to change every single year. I think Miami's got the chance, got the potential to be that second team in the ACC this year if D'Eriq King can put together a good year. You look at Miami, quarterback is the obvious issue there over the last few years. I have high expectations for D'Eriq King. We'll see. How am I leaning on this game? I'm going to take Miami and lay to 14 points. I have a feeling Miami is going to beat the absolute bejesus out of UAB. I don't have any hate for UAB. I really don't. But I just don't see them giving Miami much of a game. Does it help that UAB has played a game already and Miami hasn't? Sure, that helps. It's not going to help enough. I think Miami probably scores in the 40s in this game. I would be surprised if UAB maybe gets to the mid-20s. I think Miami wins this game by somewhere between 3 and 4 touchdowns. Give me the Hurricanes, lay to 14. All right, now we move on to the Saturday games in the ACC and what I'm calling week 2 of the 2020 football season. I go to ESPN every week to sort of look at the schedule of games, and they have this classified as week 2 of the college football season, last week being week 1. So going by that, the SEC then doesn't technically start till week 4. I don't really think that's right, wrong, or if someone else wants to call it something different. But to be consistent from week to week, I'm going to go by what ESPN is calling each week. They're referring to this as week 2. So the Saturday games within the ACC for week 2. Here we go. Syracuse on the road at North Carolina. North Carolina, one of the most talked about teams of the entire offseason, not just in the ACC, but in the entire world of college football. Huge expectations for North Carolina year 2 under Mack Brown. Sam Howell comes back at quarterback. He was nothing short of amazing most of the time last year. They've got a good defense, and it's only getting better. They've got some skill position players that Sam Howell can work with. And, of course, Mack Brown has proven in the past that he's capable of winning a national title. When one back at Texas was that 15 years ago now. So a good head coach, a good quarterback, and a good defense. That can take you a long way in the world of college football. Are they ready to compete with Clemson and knock them off and win the ACC? I don't think anybody thinks that. And I actually think people are a little bit too high on North Carolina this year. I've mentioned this a couple of times this offseason. To me, North Carolina heading into 2020 seems awfully familiar to Nebraska heading into 2019. If you guys remember, Scott Frost's first year in Nebraska was 2018. 2019 was his second year. Expectations that offseason were through the roof, and Nebraska ended up being a huge disappointment. I'm not suggesting that North Carolina will end up being a huge disappointment and win 3 or 4 games or anything like that, but I hear a lot of talk about North Carolina winning 9 or 10 games, being clearly the second best team in the ACC, being ready to compete with Clemson. I don't really see that. I do think North Carolina is a really good team. They potentially could be the second best team in the ACC this year. But again, how good really do you have to be the second best team in the ACC right now? Not very good. North Carolina fans love to remind you that of all their losses last year, 3 or 4 of them were by a touchdown or less. That's great. 4 or 5 of your wins were also by a touchdown or less. 9 games last year for North Carolina were decided by 7 points or less. Win or loss, 7 points or less. 9 of your games last year. That's a lot. I do like your quarterback, like I mentioned. I think he's the real deal. You've got some elite young talent, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I like Mac Brown. Syracuse struggled last year. What was their record last year? Did I write it down? They really struggled. They had some expectations last year, and they didn't live up to it. Offensive line ended up being one of the worst in America, not named Florida State. Tommy DeVito was supposed to have a good season. That all fell apart. How much of that is to blame on the offensive line? How much of it is to blame on Tommy DeVito himself? I don't know, but he's back this year. I do think he'll play better this year than he played last year. I do think the offensive line will play better this year than it played last year. I think Syracuse has some things to work with defensively, particularly up front. I like Dino Babers as a head coach. Are they as talented or as good as North Carolina? No, but the line on this game is 22.5, and I just think that's too many. I think Syracuse will be a scrappy team this year. I think Syracuse will keep this close with North Carolina. In fact, I expect this to be similar to a lot of the North Carolina games we saw last year. A 1-score game. I think 22.5 is just ridiculous. I'm going to take the 22.5 points in this one. Give me Syracuse and all those points. All right, coming up at 2:30 on the Notre Dame network. Notre Dame, that's right, 2:30 NBC. Notre Dame hosts Duke, and again, huge favorite here. Notre Dame is favored in this one by 20 points. Notre Dame has covered 5 of the last 6 games. Why is that? Well, I think if you pay attention and you take your betting seriously, I think you can make some money betting Notre Dame. A lot of people hate Notre Dame. Whether they have a right to or not, whether it's legitimate criticism or not, is besides the point. Generally speaking, if you're not a Notre Dame fan, you hate Notre Dame. I see it all the time. Because of that, I think that has some effect on the Notre Dame line sometimes, and I think you have an opportunity to make some money. I think Notre Dame is more than 20 points better than Duke. I think this 20-point number is a reflection of people wanting Notre Dame to struggle, not actually thinking that they will. I like Duke. They've got a quarterback in Chase Bryce, right? Transfer from Clemson. Had some experience at Clemson, actually saved their season a couple of years ago when I believe it was Trevor Lawrence got hurt. If you guys remember, Kelly Bryant played the first 4 games, then announced he was going to redshirt and not play anymore. 5th game of the year, Trevor Lawrence goes down. Chase Bryce comes in, leads Clemson back to a big win. The rest is history. Clemson went on to have a pretty good season there. So anyway, and he's a good QB. Clemson wouldn't have recruited him and signed him if he wasn't, but he was stuck behind Trevor Lawrence. He made the right move to get out of there. We'll see what he can do at Duke. Duke's a very well-coached team, but again, talent-wise, just not on the level of a Notre Dame. You look at Notre Dame, Ian Book comes back again, head coach Brian Kelly, another guy that I don't want to say he gets a bad rap, but the media doesn't particularly like Brian Kelly. He brings a lot of that on himself. But again, because it's easy not to like Brian Kelly, it's also easy, I think, to undervalue Notre Dame and how good they are. I hear it all the time. You know, I'll put Notre Dame in a poll and put them 8 or 9. Oh, Notre Dame's most overrated and blah, blah, blah. And all they do is win 10-plus games a year. They had the one bad year with Brian Kelly where he only won 3 or 4 games. But other than that, you know, they're winning 10-plus games a year, 11 games a year. They had the 12-0 season where they made the playoffs. They've been a good team consistently for the last 8 or 9 years under Brian Kelly, with the exception of that one bad year. It's at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is experienced. They've got the talent edge in this game. No home field advantage in terms of a crowd, clearly, because crowds are so limited this year. I just don't think Duke can compete with Notre Dame. I like getting this game just under the 3 touchdowns. It was at 20 points when I looked at it this morning. I would take Notre Dame and lay to 20. If it went over 3 touchdowns, I'd probably stay away. But I could see Notre Dame winning this game somewhere in the neighborhood of 45-21. Give me the Fighting Irish, lay to points. Now, here's one I struggled with and went back and forth on. Georgia Tech and Florida State. Georgia Tech plays on the road at FSU, 3:30 ABC. Neither one of these teams are very good. Which one is headed in the right direction? Are they both headed in the right direction? Florida State brings in a new head coach after the Willie Taggart disaster, and that's what it was. The guy never should have been hired. He wasn't deserving of that job. He wasn't prepared for that job. And he clearly wasn't up to that job. He ran Florida State straight into the ground. They have got one of the worst offenses in America. The QB situation is terrible. James Blackman looks good at times, but he's way too inconsistent. He looks like an injury waiting to happen. He's way too thin, and they haven't signed anybody. I know Norvell's trying to fix that, but then the offensive line is just terrible. I think they've given up almost 50 sacks over the last 2 years. Cam Akers has been their best player by a mile for the last couple of years at running back. He's gone. But anyway, the point is Florida State's just got a ton of issues offensively. Their defense was carrying them a couple of years ago. That's fallen off under Willie Taggart. Norvell's just got a ton of work to do in Tallahassee to get Florida State back to the Florida State that we were sort of used to seeing for that 25-year period where it seems like they were a top 10 team year in, year out, every single year with multiple national titles. They are a mile away from that right now. Now, the good news is if you're Florida State, you're hosting Georgia Tech, another team that needs almost a complete roster turnover. This is year 2 for Jeff Collins. He replaces Paul Johnson, who was running a triple option at Georgia Tech for about a decade. It's a very specific type of player it takes to run the triple option. Obviously, the quarterback, it doesn't matter what he can do with his arm. It's all about his legs and his ability to run that Paul Johnson option. Even the offensive line, you need a different breed of offensive lineman to run the option than you do to run a traditional offense. It was just a complete mess. They get rid of Paul Johnson. They bring in Jeff Collins, who of course wants to install more of a pro-style offense. Problem is, you have a roster full of players who have only ever ran the triple option. So I don't think anyone was surprised to see Georgia Tech struggle last year in a bad way. And I think it's going to continue this year. Now, I do think Georgia Tech will get continually better year over year as more of that roster continues to get turned over. But I think it's a 3 or 4 year plan there at Georgia Tech. I don't think they're going to be a great team this year. Better than last year? Yeah, same with Florida State, though. A lot of work to do with turning that roster over. Who can win this game? Who can improve more? Can Norvell improve Florida State more in year 1 than Jeff Collins can improve Georgia Tech in year 2? I actually think Georgia Tech will be more improved year 2 than Florida State is year 1. I do like Mike Norvell. I think he will get Florida State back to where they want to be. Not this year, though. Florida State probably wins this game. I think it's going to be close. They're favored by 12.5 points. I can't see it. Georgia Tech's got an experienced defense. I think this game could be relatively low scoring. I'm going to take Georgia Tech in the 12.5 points. I do expect Florida State to probably win the game. Addition by subtraction. Getting rid of Willie Taggart has to make a difference. Just that alone, I think, improves Florida State, regardless of what coach you bring in. Now, it just so happens I like the coach you brought in. But again, you need recruiting classes to replenish that offensive line. You need productive quarterback play. You need some running backs, and your defense has really fallen off over the last couple of years. So getting rid of Taggart, step in the right direction. Step number 2, get that white boy off that horse. What is this with the white Tonto? Come on. All right, not going to spend much time on this one. Austin Peay at Pitt, 4 o'clock on the ACC network. Austin Peay, another team that has already played 1 game. They're 0-1. They took a loss to Central Arkansas, 24-17. Does the experience of having played a game already matter? Yeah. Is it going to matter to the point where they might win this game? No. Pitt's a 27-point favorite. Pitt was surprisingly a pretty good team last year. They went sort of under the radar. Not a lot of people talked about them last year, especially outside of the ACC. But they finished 8-5 in a year where really they had no offense at all. Really, their defense carried them to those 8 wins. I think they'll have a good defense again in 2020, and I expect their offense to be at least a little bit better than what we saw last year. They got a senior quarterback who had 3,100 yards last year, but only 13 touchdowns. So they didn't have a whole lot of problem moving the ball, but they had a problem scoring points. If they can get better in that area this year, maybe they improve to 9 wins. Now, that's going to be hard to do with a shortened season and less games. But I do think Pitt overall, regardless of what their record ends up being, will be a slightly better team this year than what they were last year. They're going to absolutely destroy Austin Peay. Pitt is a 27-point favorite. I don't generally like to play these games involving Power 5 versus literal nobodies. If you were going to make me play this game, I would take Pitt and lay to 27. I could see them winning this game by 4 or 5 touchdowns, to be honest. Clemson at Wake Forest, number 1 team in America. Clemson, led by Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, and Dabo Swinney. 7:30 ABC on the road at Wake Forest, and Clemson is a 33-point favorite. lay the 33. Clemson could be winning this game by 33 at halftime. Wake Forest is not a very good team, and guess what? They lost their best player. First to Georgia, and then to the NFL. I'm not getting into the whole Jamie Newman thing, but point is, Wake Forest is not going to be a very good team this year. Clemson is going to be able to score as many points in this game as they want to. Now, you're going to see a lot of backups, I think, in the second half of this game. So laying the 33 is tricky when you're pretty sure Clemson's going to be putting in all the second and third stringers in the second half. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this game was 42-7 or something at halftime. I really wouldn't. Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, those wide receivers, they're going to go absolutely nuts in the first half of this game. It'll be a blowout by halftime. We'll see if Clemson can hold on in the second half to cover that 33. I think they will. No way we see Travis Etienne in the second half, in my opinion. Probably not Trevor Lawrence and most of those receivers either. Maybe they play the first drive or the first series or something of the third quarter. I think that'll be about it for most of those guys. I think Clemson can cover the 33. They're one of the few teams, them, Ohio State, Oklahoma. There are certain teams that you can almost count on scoring 40 or 50 points a week against inferior competition. I feel confident taking Clemson and laying a huge number. Give me the Tigers, lay the 33 points in that. All right, last game of the week for the ACC, Western Kentucky at Louisville. I think this is an interesting game. Western Kentucky, not a terrible team. They've had some really good offenses several years over the past 4 or 5 years. Louisville, another team in the ACC that is trending upward, in my opinion. I like Scott Satterfield as a head coach. I think he's got them headed the right way. 8-5 last year, which is a minor miracle. If you guys remember how bad they were the year before that. So year one, Scott Satterfield comes into Louisville, gets 8 wins. Compare that to what Manny Diaz did at Miami with more talent. So I'm not a bash Miami thing, but Louisville was in the absolute toilet in 2018. Satterfield comes in and turns this thing around, getting them to 8-5 in his first year last year. Manny Diaz shows up in Miami and really, really struggles. We talked about that at the top. So some of the losses Miami had last year are just unexplainable. Louisville's got 15 starters back from that team that went 8-5 last year. They've got an exciting offense that's fun to watch. They like to move the ball quick. Western Kentucky, same type of thing. But they've got a new quarterback this year. And because of the offseason was kind of screwy, I trust Louisville's offense to sort of pick up where it left off from last year more than I do Western Kentucky's. I do think this will be a high-scoring game. Louisville's a 12-point favorite. I like Louisville minus 12, and I like the over 58 in this game. The over-under is 58. That's the total number of points scored by both teams, if you're unfamiliar with some of these sports gambling terms. Louisville's a 12-point favorite. The total number of points they think that'll be scored is 58. I like Louisville, lay to 12. I also like over 58. There you go, ACC Week 1, the first official preview and prediction video of the 2020 season right here on YouTube. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget about the second channel where we do all the live shows. I've got, I don't even know anymore, 6 or 7 live shows a week I do over on that second channel. There's a link in the description that'll take you to the second channel. Make sure you're subscribed to both channels. All the uploaded videos will be on this channel here. The previews, the predictions, the hate videos, the hype videos, the top 10 videos, the game reaction videos, all that stuff will still be right here on this channel, but the live stuff has been moved to a second channel. Click the link, subscribe to that second channel. Visit betnow.eu, sign yourself up for an account, make yourself some money this season gambling on college football. Play responsibly. Don't bet your house payment on sports. There's a reason they call it gambling, okay? Look at it as entertainment. Whatever money you deposit into Bet Now, plan on never getting that money back. That's the best advice I can give you. I don't bet hundreds of dollars on these games either. Hell, I put $100 in last weekend, played 4 games, bet $25 per game. I went 3-1. So I won some money, I lost some money, whatever. Overall for the day, I came out a little bit ahead. I do it for fun. I don't make a living gambling. It's just something fun to do. If you're going to be watching college football anyway, why not put a little bit of money on it? Makes it a little more interesting. All right, guys, we'll see you again real soon. Have a good morning.